Thank you, Steve. And thank you, Steve, for the invitation to appear here and for your remarkable organizing of this amazing conference. It's such an open-hearted, pure endeavor. Good for you, man. Good for you. We need more like this. And thank all of you for coming, caring enough about yourself to spend a couple of days learning the real truth about health. Absolutely. I applaud all of you. So the name of this talk is Vegan Nutrition, Pure and Simple. Why in the world am I up here talking to you about this? Well, it all started 1981, 38 years ago. I was at Vancouver General Hospital, a noble institution, where I was doing a residency in anesthesiology. I thought I was going to be an anesthesiologist, did 3 years of an anesthesia residency. And if you need proof, this is what I looked like back then, and as you see, I have not changed a bit. I loved anesthesia. This is not me, a friend of mine, but this is what I did. I was the guy up at the head of the table, getting people through these remarkable procedures and feeling their life force in my hands, their pulse under my fingertips, their breathing in the respiratory bag. And anesthesia is a beautiful and noble craft. But it put me in the operating room, and day after day, I watched what surgeons did. And in the cardiovascular anesthesia room, I watched surgeons operate on hearts and blood vessels. And day after day, I would watch surgeons open up arteries, and from the artery walls, they would peel off this yellow, greasy guck called atherosclerosis. Here we are in the carotid arteries going up to the brain, and if these arteries get clogged, people suffer strokes. Here's the mechanism. Any possible to get the overhead lights down, or maybe I have to keep them up for the video, but it'd be nice. Here you see a plaque, here you see a plaque growing out of the side of the wall. The danger is that the plaque can tear open, exposing the cholesterol underneath to the blood flow channel. And this can set off formation of a clot, and the clot will stop the blood flow moving downstream. And whatever tissue is downstream, dependent upon this blood flow, winds up short of blood and often dies. If this phenomenon happens up in the brain, person suffers a stroke. If it happens in the heart, the person loses a chunk of heart muscle, and that's a heart attack. This is a common disease, number one cause of death in this country. Every 33 seconds, someone grabs their chest in this country and falls over with a heart attack. Every other one of them dies. If you do the mathematics, over a 24-hour period, every 33 seconds, that's over 2,000 people. That's a 9/11 disaster. Every 24 hours, 2,000 people go down with cardiovascular deaths. Well, in the 1980s, it was becoming obvious what the cause of all this was, not just bad genes, and cigarette smoking had something to do with it, but it became very evident that when you eat a standard Western diet and you fill your belly up with bacon and eggs for breakfast and cheeseburgers for lunch and chicken for dinner and ice cream for dessert and pizzas for snack, hour after hour, you're turning your blood thick with fat. And during this time, the fat injures the artery walls, setting you up for atherosclerotic plaque formation. It layers out on your abdomen, making you obese. It changes hormone levels, setting you up for prostate cancer, breast cancer. Not a good thing to keep your blood fatty all day. It's the main cause of this artery clogging. Also, in 1981, as I'm looking into the operating room spectacle in these people's chests and arteries, it's also becoming evident that if this fatty animal-based diet clogs people's arteries up, then a diet based on completely plant foods leaves your blood nice and clear. And keeping your blood clear and clean like this day after day after day melts away these plaques. It's quite a remarkable finding, but we had clues even back in 1977. Dr. Frey Ellis published this report that described a 65-year-old man with such severe clogged arteries that he would get crushing chest pain every 10 steps. In January of 1964, he went on a plant-based diet. his artery started opening up, and 6 months later, he was walking the hills in the UK, and by August he was climbing mountains in the Lake District. This is a reversible disease, and everyone has the ability to open up their arteries with a healthy diet. Well, this of course progressed to Dr. Esselstyn's classic studies, where you get these dramatic pictures of an artery so clogged up that it looked like the rats have been eating away at the dye channel here. These are all plaques that are encroaching into the blood flow channel, giving the scallop appearance. They should all look like this nice broad band up here. This should look like. This person went on a whole food plant-based diet, and 22 months later, this artery turned into this artery. Same artery, but these plaques will melt away. Every cardiologist who sees these pictures should say, stop the presses. How did you do this? Tell me the secret, doctor. But I've been amazed at their lack of response to this remarkable set of photos. Anyway, here I am, 1981, back in the cardiovascular operating room, and something didn't feel right. Here I am giving anesthetics 6, 8, 10 hours at a time for these complex procedures, and the surgeons are sweating bullets trying to splice these tiny little veins onto different parts of these ravaged arteries. But I knew that the patient would get through this terrible recovery with their chest split open, and they would limp out of the hospital, and no one was going to say a word to them about what their disease was. And the truth is, and I knew every surgeon who was operating knows, that even though these guys were working really hard to bypass clogging of the coronary artery down in their heart somewhere, atherosclerosis is a total body disease. If you've got it in your coronary arteries, all your arteries have plaque. And you've got plaque up in the carotid arteries to your neck, you've got it in the renal arteries to your kidneys, you've got it in the iliac arteries down to your legs. It's a total body disease. And just pecking away and rearranging the plumbing up in the heart really is not curing this person's disease in the slightest. It may save him from a sudden death due to a heart attack, but it won't save him from the stroke, won't save him from the renal failure, won't save him from the blue leg if the person continues eating those cheeseburgers and pepperoni pizzas. And heaven forbid their cardiologist or surgeon should talk to them about what they're eating. Well, 1981, my dad was already showing signs of clogged arteries. He was already having chest pain, he was already having a blue leg. I clearly had the genes for this disease, and I knew very well that if I kept eating what these patients were eating, soon that body laying on that table with that striker saw going up the sternum was going to be me. And I saw these folks when they woke up. That really hurt. I didn't want that fate at all. So I'm getting clues from the operating room that Klaper ought to clean up your diet. You ought to migrate to Dr. Ellis's plant-based diet from that fella in England. So I was getting the message from the operating room. But I was also receiving a similar message from a totally different quarter. As you heard, I went to medical school at the University of Illinois in Chicago. And during my 4th year, I did most of my rotations at big, bad old Cook County Hospital across the street. And on Saturday nights, instead of going out and boogieing with my friends, I would go to the trauma unit at Cook County, and I would help out as a 4th-year medical student. Well, you spend Saturday nights in the trauma unit at Cook County Hospital in Chicago, you are going to see everything. You're going to see the worst what human beings do to each other. The shotgun blasts at close range, the .38 caliber Saturday night specials, the machete chops, the violence in words, the sexual violence, the psychological violence. Come Sunday morning after a night shift, I would walk out of that trauma unit shaking at what I had seen. It would take me all day just to stop vibrating on the inside. And I was so moved by the effect of watching all this violence that I made a vow to myself as a 23-year-old medical student that I couldn't eliminate all the violence in the world, but I could at least eliminate the violence out of my own life, out of my own heart, out of my own words, my own actions. I really wanted to become a man of nonviolence. And there certainly is a tradition of living a life of nonviolence, and so I started reading the people who are knowledgeable in this subject. I read Mahatma Gandhi, read the Indian saints, on how to live a life of ahimsa, of nonviolence. Well, that was what I was incorporating into my life. And here I found myself up in Vancouver 7 years later as an anesthesia resident, trying to live a life of nonviolence. And one night I'm out with a friend of mine at a restaurant, and I'm holding court and pontificating about how noble it is for me to live a life of nonviolence. But I'm giving this discourse while polishing off a porterhouse steak. And my friend listened, and he looked at me with great compassion and said, yeah, that's all very well and good, Michael, but if you want to get the violence out of your life, you might want to start with that piece of animal flesh on your plate, because in fulfilling your desire for the taste of flesh in your mouth, you are paying for the death of the animal and for the next one in line at the slaughterhouse. Well, when I heard those words, all the old rationales jumped into my head. Well, the animal's dead already, and that's what they raised them for, and all the rationales that we're all familiar with came to my head. But before I could get those words out of my lips, the little voice on my shoulder said, you know, he's right. He's right. And when I went up to pay for the steak dinner, I felt complicit in a crime. I did most of my growing up on my uncle's dairy farm in northern Wisconsin. I know the truth of what it takes to put meat on the table. I saw those cows who stopped giving milk shot in the head. I chopped the heads off chickens. I know the violence inherent in all meat and dairy products. And at that point, something began really changing in my heart. If I'm going to be a man of integrity and compassion, do I walk my talk? And from that point on, whenever I'd walk past a barbecue and smell something, or I would see a chocolate sundae and get a little tempted, the little voice would come to my mind, because I knew the truth of keep that milk flowing. You got to take those calves away from the mothers and kill the mother and turn her into hamburgers. The truth of dairying. It's a violent food. All animal flesh foods are violent. And I had to ask myself, Michael, are you really that hungry that you would pay for this suffering, for the death of the animal? And the answer is always no. You know, the animals are never not looking. My conscience is never not looking. And if I'm going to be a man of integrity, I have to act in such a way. So I had no choice. I adopted a plant-based diet. I couldn't have a piece of animal flesh looking back on me at the table. Well, I certainly started enjoying the food, but I really didn't know anything about the nutritional aspects of it. And I started getting concerned. This is all very nice, but I pushed past my concern because of the way my body responded. My body loved it, and within 12 weeks, a 20-pound spare tire of fat melted off my waist. My high blood pressure came down to normal. My high cholesterol came down to normal. And I felt great waking up in a nice, lean, light body. So I was getting a validation, yep, this is a good fuel mixture to run through your body. Well, it didn't take long till I started looking in my closet. I was raised in a Jewish household after World War II. I saw the pictures of the lampshades made out of the skins of the Jews, and the belts, etc., made of the skins of the Jews, and I began looking at my own shoes and my own belt. And knowing where they came from, it started feeling ghoulish to put these on my waist and on my feet. So I knew very well that there were substitutions to be had. My Nikes were not made of leather. So I went in the backyard and I dug a hole. And when I dug the hole, I put my shoes and my belt and my wallet in there and covered it up. And I filled up the hole, stepped back, and I apologized to the animals. If you don't know, you don't know. But once you know, I think you have an obligation to recognize the totality of where these things come from. So I didn't say anything about it, but a few weeks later I'm talking to a friend of mine telling her this evolution I'd gone through, and she said, "Oh, you've become a vegan." I'd never heard the word. But I said, "Okay, I guess I'm a vegan." Well, my conscience felt good, my body felt good, but this lump above my collarbones here wasn't sure if this is a reasonable thing to do. I knew I was going to stay vegan for the animals and for the planet, but things were just getting too discordant. I couldn't spend my time being an anesthesiologist and putting people to sleep. I wanted to go back to general practice and help them wake up. And so I did. I left anesthesia with 6 months to go, much to my parents' dismay, and went back to general practice and started practicing nutritionally based medicine. But my patients were asking, is this a reasonable thing to be doing? Was this possible to run a human body on completely plant-based foods? Is this a reasonable thing to do? Is it a safe thing to do? I didn't know. It was 1981 and I had nothing to fall back on. But I had my hemp wallet, so I knew that I was doing the right thing. Could a completely plant-based diet provide all the protein, calories, fats, vitamins, and minerals that the human body requires for excellent health? Well, I had some clues. So do you. There's no denying the biggest, strongest, most powerful animals on planet Earth, elephants, buffaloes, giraffes, gorillas, grow to thousands of pounds of mammalian muscles without ever eating cheeseburgers. There's no question you can grow mammalian muscle out of plant-based material. These animals have no problem doing it. So clearly it's biochemically possible. So can we do it in a human body? Back in the 1980s, there were already vegetarian athletes. Bill Pearl was a champion weightlifter. Dave Scott was doing Ironman triathlon records on plant-based diets. So another clue, it can be done. Okay, Klaper, sit down and get the primitive nutrition analysis programs that were available then and work it out. Prove it to yourself that it's a reasonable thing to do. And so I did, and we're just going to cut right through it right now. Let me put up a day of healthy, whole plant-based foods and show you the nutritional analysis. We'll talk about how to make these foods happening, but we'll start with breakfast and have a bowl of oatmeal with fruit and blueberries and walnuts and some flax seeds on it with a cup of rice milk. Lunch, let's have a salad, a bowl of lentil soup. Let's take a scoop of last night's veggie stir fry over some rice. Green and yellow, green and yellow. Those should be your favorite color. Have something green, something yellow most every lunch and dinner. So here's some broccoli and some steamed carrots and some cantaloupe chunks for dessert. Nice lunch. And dinner time comes around. Definitely let's have another salad. Thank you, Dr. Furman. The salad is the main dish, as he says. Here's some red bean chili over quinoa, green and yellow, green and yellow. Here's some kale and a sweet potato and some raspberries for dessert. A wonderful day of whole food, plant-based eating. Whole food. These are whole foods, okay? This is what humans should eat. So, it's 2019. We have all sorts of great tools available, and one is a wonderful program. If you don't know Chronometer, it's a really, really helpful free program for nutritional analysis. So I took all those foods and ran them through Chronometer, and here's what you get. Here's the analysis. Okay, calories, lovely. Just shy of 2,200 calories. That's nice for an adult man. We got plenty of fiber. You're going to pass big, soft, bulky stools with this. Your colon's going to love this food. Plenty of iron, though we may not absorb all of it. And in fact, let me point out a couple of very interesting features. Here's the water content, okay? 2.5 liters of water just in the food. There's no liquid water here, okay? This is a whole food plant-based diet. Plants are mostly water. And so this is a high water content diet, and that's a good thing. It gives your kidneys plenty to work with to excrete waste. But just to show you, and I'm not saying you shouldn't drink water, but you're going to be consuming a high water content diet. So I have people saying, I'm up at night peeing. Well, at dinner time, you have a big bowl of soup and a big salad and a big plate of steamed veggies. You're eating a lot of water. And you're supposed to pee by midnight or 2 in the morning. You're going to pee for all that water out. It's not a disease. If it bothers you, you may want to move your wet foods or eating earlier in the day. But just to point out, this is a high water content diet, and it's a good thing. The truth of it is. Here are all the B vitamins. Every one of them is amply covered as far as exceeding the 100%. We way overshot on vitamin A because of the sweet potatoes, the carrots, and the cantaloupe, but that's fine. Don't get seduced by the numbers game. Don't get frightened. This is just the chemical analysis. But just because there's X amount of vitamin A in a carrot doesn't mean you actually absorb that. Most of the vitamin A is locked onto the fiber that's going to pass out into the toilet. You don't absorb all of this food. And your intestine has the ability to decide how much iron it really wants to let into the intestine. So you say, oh, well, you're way high on vitamin A. It's okay. And the next day's meal, there'll be less vitamin A. And the body compensates for this. So don't get too hung up on the numbers. Just take comfort at all the green, positive values here that we met the requirements. Here, let's see, we met 90% of the fat requirements, 58 grams of fat. Where am I going to get your protein? Here are all the amino acids, and every one of them are easily met by the rice and beans and greens on a whole food plant-based diet. Here's the calcium, by the way, very interesting. We get almost 994, almost 1,000 milligrams of calcium just from the food. Hey, well, that's only 83%. In America, we said the average calcium or the recommended amount, 1,200 milligrams of calcium. Nobody on planet Earth recommends 1,200 milligrams. That's from the Dairy Association pushing the limit up. The truth of it is, if you go around the world, in Europe, they average 525 milligrams. World Health Organization just recommends 400 to 500. The UK 700. So we got 900 just in this food. You're not going to get osteoporosis on this dietary plan. I'll guarantee it. And the calcium from plant foods is much better absorbed than it is even from milk. Kale, you get what? 40 to 59% absorption. Milk, only a third actually gets absorbed. Well, you say, well, I couldn't make all this food during the day. You don't have to. As you get more familiar with this kind of cooking, you make up a big pot of lentil soup, and you get freezer containers, and you ladle half of it into the containers, let it cool, put lids on, and put it in your freezer. Now you got a bunch of frozen soup portions in your freezer. When you don't feel like cooking, the morning you get up, take one out, let it thaw during the day, and it's ready to eat by lunchtime. The same thing, make up a big pot of chili and freeze half of it. And so you start using batch cooking in your freezer to make life much easier for you. You have a big salad in the fridge. My wife always has either a pot of rice or a pot of quinoa in the fridge. She's got a big salad all the time, some salad dressing going. There's usually a crock pot on the counter with a soup or a chili in it. And this kind of way to eat is easy to do. You do not have to eat a bowl to be as strong as one. And people are concerned, when I get my protein, I'm going to turn into a wuss eating all these veggies. Yeah? I invite you to Google plant-based athletes and hit images and see who shows up on your screen. Do any of these ladies and gentlemen look protein deficient to you? Just want to, I know all of these people, they're lovely people. Derek just had his second son. I call your attention to Mr. Jim Morris at age 61. Here's Jim Morris at age 71. This is lifetime nutrition. Now, you won't turn into Jim Morris without a lot of sweat in the gym, but the idea that I can't build muscle on plants is nonsense. Ask any gorilla, ask any camel, ask any giraffe. They have no problems. If you're interested in more going into the technical side and the nutritional analysis of foods, if you go to my website, drklaper.com, and you go to videos, you'll see a whole bunch of them. I've got one called Thriving on a Plant-Based Diet, and it goes into the details of how to make sure that you're not missing any nutrients. I'll touch on some of the highlights here, but it's a more complete presentation of what I'm giving to you here. People who are raised as vegans on a plant-based diet, or people who adopt it fairly early in their life, pretty much have, I hate to use the word guarantee, but there's no reason these young women should ever become obese eating rice and beans and greens and fruits and vegetables. There's no reason they will ever develop clogged arteries. There's no reason they'll develop type 2 diabetes. They won't develop high blood pressure. They shouldn't develop uterine fibroids. They should live long, healthy, happy lives for many, many decades. Now, let's talk about some problems. I want to make this a practical presentation for you. And I want to make vegan nutrition work for you should you choose to go that direction. And no, you don't have to be a complete vegan. A little piece of flesh once or twice a week is not going to make lightning come down from the sky and strike you dead. But there's ramifications even to that. And I'll share those with you as we go on. The problems that people run into when I meet people who try to be vegan and it isn't working for them, there's usually a number of reasons why. They're not choosing the right food. You want to be a whole food plant-based diet, and you can't do this on Oreo cookies, granola bars, and energy drinks. You got to really eat the real healthy food, folks. This will not turn you into a healthy person. Now, you may see this when you walk into the grocery store. As you walk by this, it may actually call your name. And I'm crunchy and chewy and delicious. Why don't you take a couple bags of me home? I've often heard it. They pronounce my last name correctly. It's remarkable. This is not food. As Michael Pollan says, this is certainly not whole or vital food. This is edible food-like substances in brightly colored packages and boxes. You do not want to eat edible food-like substances in brightly colored packages and boxes because it's full of free radicals and salt and sugar and things that will damage you. So what do? It's tempting. What do I do when I see this? I realize these are pleasure trap foods. As Dr. Goldhammer was telling you this morning, these are foods that stimulate your goody gland, release serotonin and dopamine in your brain, but they don't provide nutrition. They just tease your sensory circuitry and make you eat a lot of food that you shouldn't. They stimulate pleasure centers in the brain. They're pleasure trap foods. You don't want to eat them. So what do? What do I do is when I see these things and I'm at all tempted, I take out my 3-word magic wand, point it right at the display, and I say out loud, that's not food. And then I walk down the soap aisle so I don't have to look at the stuff. Another problem is that people don't absorb the nutrients they need. Consequently, they develop deficiencies of vitamins and minerals. We'll talk about these specifically. What am I talking about? Nutrient malabsorption. Oh, and by the way, on the video on my website, Thriving on a Plant-Based Diet, I'll talk about some of the traps that we fall into. I'll touch on them here. But I also talk about underweight vegans, overweight vegans, vegans who are cold all the time, vegans with splitting nails. You can check this out on my website, Thriving on a Plant-Based Diet. I'm sorry? Put the other slide back for a second. The other slide back up. That one. Okay. Okay, I'll give you the count of 4. 1. Take your picture. 2, 3, 4. Got lots to cover here. Okay, moving right along. Okay. Rules for thriving on a plant-based diet. You got to eat the frickin' food. You can't do this out, as I said, out of packages and boxes. You need real live soups and salads and greens and fruits and vegetables and foods that grew out of the ground. It's got to be fresh, got to be whole, got to be vital food, not processed to the greatest extent possible. It's got to look like this. Okay, you keep your belly full of this stuff, you're going to wind up lean and healthy with normal blood pressures and normal blood sugar. The pot belly will go away, your joints stop hurting, and you turn into a normal, healthy human being. This is the key to health. I'm a vegan. This is what your body is meant to run on. We have the same digestive system that our gorilla and bonobo cousins have that are up in the trees, and this is what this lovely lawn digestive system runs so beautifully on. We want to eat food like it was growing in the garden. Okay, you want to eat potatoes, not potato chips. Okay? You want to eat corn, not corn chips. Eat food like it was growing in the garden. Food as grown, as Dr. Deal says. So, eat whole, unprocessed foods. You got to absorb the nutrients. What does that mean? Now, you've heard the saying, you are what you eat. It's not true. Truth is, scientifically, you are what you absorb. If those nutrients don't make it from the food across your intestinal membrane and into your bloodstream and delivered to your tissues, you might as well not have eaten it. Absorption is the key to thriving on this kind of food. So if that's the case, we have to realize that animal foods are real easy to bite and digest because they just have this soft, floppy membrane around them. Plant foods have this rigid cell wall. That's what makes plants plants, and it's made of cellulose, and we don't have enzymes to break down cellulose. Cellulose is what's used to make paper and 2x4s, and all the nutritional goodies that we want out of the carrot or out of the apple are all locked up in this chamber of cellulose. That's what makes plants plants. And in order to absorb the nutrients out of the plant foods, you got to break down those cell walls. How do you do that? Mother Nature gave us 32 of the best juicers on the planet, and the invitation is to use them. We really need to break down those cell walls, and that's what your grinding teeth are about. So this is high fiber food, folks. These fresh salads and soups, they are full of fiber. You've got to take the time to break that fiber up. So I tell people, put a forkful of salad in your mouth, put the bloody fork down, make salad puree in your mouth before you swallow it. Take an extra 5 seconds to really chew the food to a puree. You're going to absorb so much more food. Plus, that's when you taste it. You're going to enjoy it much better. If people don't have good dentition, then throw the soup in the blender. So, we do blended salads, blended soups all the time. Perfectly legitimate thing to do. And turn off the television and be with your food, okay? We've become a nation of mindless shovelers, and we just shovel this food in. And it's not good for digestion or for our gratitude. You can get more nutrition out of beans and peas, legumes, if you soak them overnight before you put them in the soup or before you put them in the stew. So soak them overnight, they start to sprout, it starts to pre-digest the sugars in there, makes the protein more available. The next morning, spill off the soaking water, rinse it a few times, and then put that in your soup pot. You're going to get a lot more nutrition out of everything. Certainly legumes, beans, peas, chickpeas, lentils, but also nuts, seeds, grains. As much as you can, soak them overnight. And when you make a soup, the minerals go out into the soup broth. So soups certainly have a role in a whole food plant-based diet. Especially if you're a woman of reproductive age, you're losing iron every month in the menstrual flow, you want to increase iron absorption. So squeezing some lemon juice, vitamin C increases iron absorption. So squeezing some lemon juice on your broccoli will increase the absorption of iron. You can absorb zinc better in the presence of garlic and onions. And zinc is a tough one sometimes for vegans to get. So sauteing your greens or cooking them with garlic and onions will increase the absorption of zinc and iron. And again, this is all on my video, Thriving on a Plant-Based Diet. When you cut cruciferous vegetables, let them sit on the counter for 5 to 10 minutes. Enzymes get activated that make nutrients, nitric oxide precursors more available for you. So take your time, slice up the broccoli or the kale, and then go start getting your soup ready, but let the veggies sit out for a little bit, and you'll be able to absorb more nitric oxide precursor. Iodine is an issue. for vegans. As I mentioned yesterday, in the base of our neck, we've got this gland called the thyroid gland. It puts out a hormone, thyroxine, that regulates how fast your cells burn energy. And it's a vital hormone, you need it. Here's a diagram of thyroxine. And these 4 purple balls are atoms of iodine. So every molecule of thyroxine has 4 atoms of iodine. So you need some iodine in your diet. The fish eaters get iodine because the ocean's full of it, and so the fish will have it, but we don't eat fish if you're a vegan, and I think we've been clear-cutting the ocean. We've strip-mined the ocean. We've used fishing up. You know, it's done. It's time to let the fish off the hook. You know, it's time to let the oceans heal. So if you're not eating fish, where are you going to get your iodine? Well, there are sea vegetables that pick up iodine, and one of them is wakame. You see that at the Japanese restaurant, and you soak it for a few hours or overnight and throw a gob of it into your soup or salad 3 times a week. You'll meet your iodine needs that way. Erame, you see that in salads made with sea vegetables, and again, a gob of it soaked and thrown into your soup or salad 3 times a week will work nicely. Are you concerned about contamination of these sea vegetables? Go to the website. I like Maine Coast here, but go to their website and look for their nutritional analysis for contaminating minerals, etc. Dulse is another sea vegetable that has plenty of iodine, and again, a tablespoon or so, 2-3 times a week will meet your iodine needs. Be very careful with kelp. There is so much iodine in kelp that if you take kelp tablets or eat leaves of it, you will flood your thyroid with too much iodine and really cause the hypothyroidism you're trying to prevent. That's why it comes in sprinkle bottles there, and just a couple of sprinkles a few times a week is plenty of kelp to put on your salad. Don't use too much of it. And don't use hijiki at all. It picks up arsenic from the ocean. Well, people say, well, how about sea salt? Comes from the sea. Sea's full of iodine. Got to have a lot of iodine in sea salt, right? Wrong, actually. There's not really much functional iodine in sea salt at all. Why not? That doesn't make sense. Well, it does if you remember some old high school chemistry. Remember this one, your periodic table of elements here? This column, this is the halogen column. Fluorine, chlorine, bromine, iodine, acetine. And they all share some common properties. One of which we all know of chlorine. When you go in the swimming pool, what do you smell coming off of it? You smell chlorine because chlorine evaporates. It's volatile. And in fact, all of the halogens, these are all volatile, and that means they evaporate into the air. Well, that includes iodine. It's a volatile halogen. So what does that mean? Well, how do you make sea salt? You take big vats of seawater, put them out in the hot sun, and evaporate the water off to leave the sodium chloride behind. Well, with all this hot sun, guess what else evaporates from the seawater? The iodine. And for that reason, you're not going to find much iodine left in actual sea salt. And so for that reason, if you want to use sea salt, then you can use just a pinch of iodized sea salt. You want a sea salt where they've added the iodine back in, and you certainly can get iodized sea salt. And if you're going to be using sea salt iodine source, make sure it's iodized. Okay, and finally, vitamin B12. What's a vitamin B12? It's a complex, beautiful molecule that's absolutely essential for your brain and your spinal cord and your blood. This is a molecule of vitamin B12. It's a beautiful molecule. It's got this lovely four-circled lattice here and kind of a tail of molecules coming off here. The tail is very important. Now, people say, well, that's why I need my red meat, man. Get my B12 that way. There's a lot of B12 in beef, a lot of B12 in chicken. That's why you need meat, B12. No animal makes vitamin B12. Cows don't make B12, chickens don't make it, pigs don't make it. No animal makes vitamin B12. Vitamin B12 is made by bacteria that live in the soil. Animals have B12 in their flesh because they're eating grass all day. Cows and sheep and cattle and deer and buffalo and antelope and geese, actually, are grazing animals, and they live on the grass they pull up from the ground, and on the roots of the grass they're eating, there are particles of soil. And in these soil particles are these B12 producing microbes. The animal swallows them, the microbes in their gut produces B12, it's absorbed into their muscles. Yes, you can kill the cow or the pig and strip the flesh off its bones and eat it and get B12 that way. But it was bacterial B12 all along. The animal didn't make it. Okay, it was always plant-derived. So what? Well, you can also find B12 in the stream water. The animals, both they poop in the stream, and the waters, every rainstorm washes off the fields and washes B12 into the streams. So every time this female elk drinks, she's going to get some B12. Well, guess who else gets their B12 from the natural world that way? We do. When we were living Earth-connected lives, that same vitamin B12 was flowing through our guts as well. And because we spent all day foraging, that whole paleo mythos that every caveman had a mastodon in the freezer and spent all day eating mammoth meat. I'm a caveman. It's a myth. Most hunts were unsuccessful. Most times the guys came back empty-handed. They did drag a carcass back into camp. It rotted within a day or two. You couldn't eat the stuff. And we'd never get through the winter like that. The reality is that most of the calories that were brought into the Paleolithic camp were gathered by the women, who spent all day pulling up roots and tubers and starchy corms and drying them and cooking them. And this is where the majority of the calories came from that kept our Paleolithic ancestors alive, not from mammoth meat. And that, by the way, is why we have the mouth and teeth that we have a small mouth with flat grinding molar teeth, because we lived on starches. That's the natural food for us. People say, what about these big canines? Why are we giving them, we're not supposed to eat meat, how about our canines? You want to see some, I invite you to go into the bathroom, stand in front of the mirror, open your mouth, and have a look. If your teeth look like that, then by all means, go to the nearest butcher shop, buy a piece of steak, go outside and rip off the paper and have at it, man, don't bother to cook it. But you can see these teeth are not going to work for starchy vegetables. That's not what we have. These are little canines, are meant for biting into apples and roots and starchy vegetables. This is what our grinding teeth are really for. So, vitamin B12, you need it. Don't ignore it. If you're not eating animal flesh, then where are you going to get your B12? Not that the animals make it, but where are you going to get it? Along comes modern sanitation. Nobody's drinking out of streams anymore. Nobody's eating unwashed vegetables anymore. And due to modern sanitation, which is okay with me, I don't want to treat cases of cholera and typhoid fever. It's okay to put chlorine in the water supply. But meanwhile, it's there to kill bacteria, and it kills the B12 producing organism. And because of modern sanitation, the classic natural B12 sources have dropped out of our lives. And it's for that reason that today's vegan has to use supplemental vitamin B12. It's not because the diet is naturally lacking, so therefore it can't be the proper diet for us. When we were living Earth-connected lives, nobody took vitamin B12 supplements. But it's modern life. No one wants to drink out of streams, and that's why you need to get a supplement. I believe methylcobalamin is the most absorbable form. 500 micrograms, 1,000 micrograms under your tongue twice a week, 3 times a week, should meet everybody's needs. You want to take it every day, you can. I want to point out something important about blue-green algae and spirulina. This is the vitamin B12 molecule. It's, again, got that lovely, nice long tail here. But a lot of primitive plants make similar molecules. But they're not really B12. Here's a B12-like analog, but the problem is This nitrogen-containing ring down here has been broken open down here. This OH group is now a single bonded oxygen. If I can, I'm at a bad angle here. It's not the same molecule. It's close, but it's not the same molecule, and it doesn't work. It'll occupy the receptor site for real B12, but it doesn't turn the lock. It doesn't do what B12 is supposed to do. It's a B12 analog. It's pseudo vitamin B12. You should know that. Some sea vegetables make this. But spirulina and blue-green algae are really good at making B12 analogs. And there are some disturbing studies here where they look for pseudo B12 in, which one is this one? This is spirulina tablets. And it turns out that most of them were analogs identified as pseudo B12. So I'm not a big fan of spirulina tablets if you're trying to keep your B12 levels normal. And the same thing with blue-green algae. They found the same thing. The purified cornoid was identified pseudo-vitamin B12. And so they suggest that blue-green algae is not suitable for B12, especially in vegans. So get it out of the real, get it out of a supplement that's specifically made for human absorption. Again, this is in my Thriving on a Plant-Based Diet. I guess it's also in this video. So what do? I take a multivitamin. Now, as I mentioned yesterday, we all have been burned on the multivitamin issue because these high potency vitamins come in and they start building up in your tissues, and you can't get rid of 50,000 units of vitamin A. You can't get rid of 30,000 units of beta carotene. You can't get rid of 5 milligrams of folic acid, and they start building up in your tissues and doing things like vitamin A causes hip fractures, beta carotene increases lung cancer growth, folic acid gives breast lumps and prostate cancers. So we all backed off of high potency multivitamins. So what do? Because you still need some B12, and you need some vitamin K2, some vitamin D, etc. Along comes my friend Dr. Joel Fuhrman, and this is the label off of his men's daily and his women's daily. I have no financial connection with Dr. Fuhrman's vitamin sales. But when I looked at his label, I said, I should have thought of that. What a great formulation, because what did he do? Well, first of all, he took out the vitamin A, took out the beta carotene, took out the folic acid, took out all the baddies. He took the other ones and toned them way down. Vitamin C only down to 100 milligrams. But he did leave in a good belt of vitamin D, 2,000 of vitamin D, so you don't have to take a separate vitamin D. He gives a little vitamin K to make sure calcium goes to your bones instead of your artery walls. Here he covers your B12 with 200 micrograms of B12 every day, so you don't have to take a separate B12. He toned down the calcium down to 200 instead of 1,000 milligrams. But with the almost 1,000 milligrams in our food that we saw, plus this 200, look at that, we're up at that 1,200 that the USDA is recommending. Here's 150 micrograms of iodine from seaweed, so that covers your thyroid issue. I made a little bit of magnesium, but just 100, very modest. And you've got a little bit of zinc, 15, which is, can be challenging for vegans to get if you're not eating lots of root vegetables. And then he throws in some various mushrooms, vitamins, etc. It's a really well thought out vitamin. And so, so I take a couple of his every morning and done. And so I don't have to take separate B12, separate D, separate zinc, so I don't have to do that. So you can buy his vitamins off Amazon. I should get a commission. I sell more of his vitamins than he does. You can get them through my website if you want, if you go to the resources section. Now, finally, we got these omega-3 fatty acids. What's that about? These are long-chain fatty acids that you need for your brain. You need them for your hormones. You need them, your cell membranes require them. And these are the fats that are turned into prostaglandins that turn inflammation down. So you need some of this every day. You can't skip it. It's an absolutely essential nutrient. Well, where's it found? Well, omega-3 fats, and I'll show you what they are. They're found in foods. Here is... Here they're found in walnuts, they're found in dark green leafy vegetables, found in ground flax seeds. So I'm a big fan of a handful, 2 handfuls of walnuts every day. That's a health food. Dark green leafy vegetables. Don't go to bed at night till you can look back over your eating day and say, oh yeah, I had a big helping of broccoli at lunch, a big helping of kale at dinner. At least once a day, if not twice a day, you want a big gazunta helping of something dark and green. And the omega-3s and the magnesium are the 2 main reasons. And again, you get it in ground flax seeds as well. Okay, so definitely have these in your diet, but not quite so simple. The issue is this is the most complicated one on the, just don't let your eyes glaze over. There's something important to learn here. So here is the long chain fatty acid that's found in nature and found in these foods, walnuts, flax seeds, dark greens. They have this fatty acid called linolenic acid, and it's 18 carbon atoms in a row. And at carbon atom number 1, 2, 3, you run into a double bond. That's what makes it an omega-3 fatty acid. So all the chemistry you need to know. Okay, nice stuff. And you want to have 3 or 4 grams, 3 or 4,000 milligrams of linolenic acid every day. That's why you eat the walnuts and the greens. The problem is that your body doesn't really use this 18 carbon atom chain. It needs a longer chain. So you eat the walnuts and the flax seeds, but your liver will take that 18 carbon atom chain here, and it will add 2 carbons to it, and 18 plus 2 is 20. And now you've got a 20 carbon atom chain, and that one is called EPA, eicosapentaenoic acid. A much more useful fat. Your body has lots of uses for EPA, but it's still not the final product that your body really needs. So your liver will take another 2 carbon acetate fragment and bang it on to EPA and turn that 20 carbon atom chain to a 22 carbon atom, and that's called DHA. That's what you really need. So you got these 2 steps, these 2 chain lengthening steps that have to take place in your body for the flaxseed oil, the walnut oil to really turn into DHA, what you really want. Okay. The problem is we Homo sapien mammals, we're not real good at this. At the most, 10% of the linolenic acid that we eat in the walnuts and the flax seeds really turns into EPA. And a lot of folks, growing kids, that's not enough. And there's real concern. If you let this level slip too long, your brain needs so much of this stuff that there are now studies of vegans with brain shrinkage and dementia from DHA deficiency. Dr. Furman's called our attention to this. This is no joke. And I've got a couple of vegans I'm worried about as far as their mentation goes, because they just blew this off. Do not dismiss this. This is a real issue here. And studies, as it says, have clearly shown that levels of long-chain fatty acids are depressed in vegans. Now, back to this chain lengthening step, we have a real problem with the rest of our diet, because if you are eating junky oils, if you're eating chips and schmips and dips that are cooked, that are fried in cottonseed oil and sunflower oil and these omega-6 oils, these guys block these 2 steps that we don't do very well to begin with, and the junk oils depress it even further. And this is why DHA deficiency is so rampant among vegans, and it's nothing to joke about. The junk food vegans are at high risk for dementia. So what do you do about it? Okay, eat the food. Eat the dark leafy greens, have the flax, have the walnuts, etc. Avoid those omega-6 oils, the junky cottonseed oil, safflower oil. Don't be eating the baggy edible food-like substance out of brightly colored packaging boxes. But as they're saying, because they are concerned that of the fatty acid deficiency, or Australian vegans, they are really low. To ensure physical, mental, and neurologic health, vegetarians have to reduce the omega-6s and consider additional intake of direct sources of EPA and DHA. And I take a DHA supplement, and I suggest you do too. Do not ignore this one. So you want to consider one. Now, yes, DHA is in fish oil, but fish don't make it. They don't make DHA any more than cows make B12. DHA, these long-chain fats, are made by plants. They're made by algae cells that float in the water, And fish swim in the water with their mouths open, swallowing algae all day. And it's the algae oil that winds up in the fish's muscle. And what gets sold as fish oil is really algae oil that's wound up in the fish's muscle. Well, we're running out of fish, I'm sure, I hope you've heard. So for that reason, you need to take, you should probably consider taking some supplemental oil. Do I really have to do this? Well, one thing to do is do a little finger stick test and check your DHA level and your EPA level. There's lots of labs that will do it. Genova will do it off a finger stick, and you fill up the 4 little circles of blood and send it off, and you'll get an analysis. If it's low, definitely supplement. But even if you're always safe taking a modest amount of DHA or EPA. So if you just go online and just put algae-derived DHA, there's 20 different brands of it. I don't care which one you take, but some come in veggie caps, some are liquid. But I would, if I were you, I would take between 150 to 300 milligrams of DHA daily. I think it'll help your skin, it'll help your nails, it'll help your brain. It's most important. Okay, so we're coming down the home stretch here. This is all the things that I mentioned here. Chew your food, soak your grains, eat your greens, take your B12. Vitamin D is important for your immunity and to prevent dementia. We all spend time inside. Get your D level checked. If you can keep your D level up with just sunshine on your skin, if you can keep it over 30, cool, then you don't need any supplements. But 2,000 international units of vitamin D is always safe, and they said it's in that multivitamin. Okay, those are the nutrients that you got to pay some attention to, especially B12, DHA, and vitamin D are really important. Do not ignore them. All right, let's just talk about some realities about how to make this really work for you. I get people, I'm trying to be a vegan once, I got all gassy and made me feel bad, and so it's not my fault. I don't digest well. I don't digest very well. Every one of us here who is not desperately skinny is able, by definition, to absorb nutrients and keep your weight on. But if you're not used to eating lots of beans and peas and chickpeas and other legumes, your microbiome down your gut isn't ready either. And if you're not eating legumes on a regular basis, again, the food you eat determines the microbes that live in your gut. And as you start eating more and more legumes, your microbes change into less gas-producing ones to begin with, to produce gas. But right at the beginning, you're taken by surprise, and you dump 2 cups of bean chili down into your colon when your microbes haven't seen it for a long time. Don't be surprised when you get a whole lot of gas from that. There's nothing wrong with you. That's not a disease. It doesn't mean you can't digest plants and that beans are terrible. Realize, there are times I'll have a lot of gas and then not for months. What happens? I'll eat a particular food or combination of food, and without my knowing it, it spawns some bacteria that are really good gas producers. And then so they're down there waiting, and 2 or 3 days later, I'll eat a bunch of beans and starches or whatever, and those guys that I summoned up will then take that and produce a bunch of methane and carbon dioxide. And so I got a bunch of gas, I farted for a few days, then it goes away. And all animals fart, gorillas do it, giraffes do it, they all do, and so do we. And it's not a sign that you can't digest or there's something evil going on in your gut. Now, a lot of the gas that's produced off the beans comes off the surface. There's a sugar called hemicellulose, and you can get rid of it because it's soluble in water. So if you're going to be making bean soup or lentil stew, soak the beans or the lentils overnight, and in the morning spill off the soaking water, rinse them a couple times, and you'll get rid of most of the gas, most of the sugar that causes the gas. But I don't want to skip over this. So maybe you should get legumes into your diet. You really should. All the long-lived people in the blue zones eat beans and peas and lentils. But maybe just to start with a tablespoon at a given meal for every night for a week or so, and then 2 tablespoons. Take a month to slowly build up to that cup of legumes and give your guts a chance to compensate and keep up for the changes that you're asking of it. Whoops. All right. Okay. Some people do, they eat too much fruit. Fruit is a laxative, and they're drinking smoothies and eating pounds of grapes, and I got loose stools. Yes, fruit sugars are a laxative. And I'm not in the camp of Brian, who feels all fruit is evil. I think fruits are fine in reasonable amounts, but if you're eating a huge amount of them, don't be surprised if you wind up with some loose stools and gas from the sugars. I'm not a big fruit smoothie fan, and for that reason, there's nothing physiologic about dumping 16 ounces of fructose and potassium down your gullet in 90 seconds like people do with their smoothies. If you are going to consume them, take a mouthful, put the glass down, chew it up, mix with your saliva, swallow it, wait 10 minutes. Let it get down into your gut, let it move out into your duodenum. Give your body a chance to absorb this stuff. I'm not a big fan of fruit smoothies, but I'm a big fan of green smoothies. I suggest you go to the website of Dr. Brooke Goldner. She's a doctor who cured herself of lupus, and she used a lot of green smoothies to do this. And she's got a great video on YouTube, a little 4-minute video how she makes her smoothies. And she takes her Vitamix, and she takes a big bag of kale and broccoli sprouts, etc., and she packs it in there. She uses her elbow. She really it's a green smoothie. That blender is full of greens. She puts in a little water or almond milk and a couple of mangoes, and that's it. And she puts the top on, and she makes a green smoothie, much more natural. But again, take all morning to drink it. Don't chug that thing down all at once. If you go to my website, drklaper.com, you go to the Q&A section, you'll see a day of healthy eating. I've got a guide of 1 day of healthy eating: fruit and oatmeal for breakfast, soup, salad, steamed veggies, etc. Here's how it looks like in the real world. Breakfast, fruit and oatmeal, sure works. Just some fruit, have the cantaloupe, that's all fine. But breakfast is optional. While you're sleeping, you're in a semi-fasting state. You're living mostly off your fat stores. Just because the sun comes up in the morning doesn't mean you got to run into the kitchen and start shoving a bunch of carbohydrates in your mouth. Your body is perfectly capable of burning that nighttime fat mixture all morning. In fact, when I ask people in my office, when you first get up in the morning, are you starving to death? Are you famished? Can you not wait to get down to that kitchen table and shove carbohydrates in your mouth? Most people say, Doc, I'm not even that hungry in the morning. And there's a good reason for that. You are still burning that nighttime fat mixture, and especially if you have weight to lose, keep that nighttime fat burning going all morning. Just drink water until you get hungry. It's absolutely a reasonable breakfast. If you're not really hungry, and especially if you've got weight to lose, just drink water all morning until you get hungry. This is time-restricted feeding. This touches on intermittent fasting, but absolutely reasonable. This idea of breakfast, most important meal of the day, is nonsense. It's an advertising gimmick. If you are, and it's quite a story attached to that, but it really is. It was made up by advertisers. There's no science behind it. But if you're hungry, by all means eat. I'm not saying go hungry and have some fruit or fruit and oatmeal. Granolas are really sugary. Mueslis are better. But if you're trying to lose weight, just drink water till noon. Okay, the rest of the day, that was breakfast. The rest of the day, I say hang on the 4S clothesline. Soups, soup, salad, steamed veggies, and starches. Start with the soups. Boring soups are not allowed. We're talking about really hearty vegetable soups and stews and goulashes and pozzoles and chowders and curries. There's a world of hearty soups. And again, you can make them up in an Instapot or a crock pot and freeze half of them in containers so you've got them in the freezer and eat them all day. Call your attention to my friend Jeff Novick. He's a vegan dietitian. He's got this wonderful series called Fast Foods. And he shows you how to whip up these dynamite soups in 10 minutes that you can eat off of for 3 days in the fridge. You only have to cook like twice a week. Make up a big pot of soup on Monday, coast on it Tuesday, Wednesday, make up another soup on Thursday, coast on that Friday, Saturday, and instead you freeze some of each. You only have to do a cooking thing like twice a week. People say, I don't want to be in the kitchen chopping and cooking all day. You don't have to. You can buy veggies already cut up, and organic ones from the freezer. Open up, take your crock pot, fill it 2/3 full of water, throw in a cup of rice, cup of beans, cup of lentils, a bag of frozen veggies, and some seasonings. Put the lid on, hit the button, go to bed. Let it cook all night. You don't have to do a whole cooking thing. Lots of recipes to search for on the internet, vegan soups and curries and goulashes. So that's the soup. The salads are really important, like Dr. Firm, again, how to make a crock pot soup. If you've made the soup in the morning, pour some off into freezer containers, let them cool and freeze them. The rest of the soup you can keep warm during the day, and every time you're walking through the kitchen, ladle out a cup of soup and chow down. It's all fiber and water, it doesn't stick to you. You can have 6 bowls of it a day, it doesn't matter, you pee it right out. So this is joyous, guilt-free eating. Have all you want. If you're going out for the day, don't play victim. Oh, there was nothing to eat at the office except donuts, and at the nurse's station there were just a bunch of candies, and there was nothing in the cafeteria, and I had to stop at McDonald's. Nonsense. You're a grown man or a grown woman. Stop playing victim here. Take your healthy food with you. Before you leave the kitchen door, get yourself a little picnic container, and 3 things go in there for your day away from home. Get a wide mouth thermos jug and fill it up with that nice soup you just made. Take 2 or 3 jugs with you, but have a couple of thermoses of hearty soup. Get a salad. You can buy them pre-made at Trader Joe's and Whole Foods these days with a non-oil dressing, and some cut up fruit. And you eat your way through your work day, and in between clients or errands, you take a pull of soup and throw in a couple of grapes and on to your next task. But keep your belly full of this all day, and the restaurants don't look so tempting on the way home. So, soups and salads. The third S, salads, more colorful the better. The salads are the main dish. You don't need olive oil to make salad dressings. You want to get away from the oils. They're liquid fat in a bottle. They hurt your arteries. They make you fat. Just Google no oil salad dressing recipes. And you take a blender, take some veggies from the salad, take some carrots and celery and broccoli and onions, throw them in the blender with a cup of water, a couple of walnuts, a piece of an orange, hit the button, salad dressing. Pour it on your salad. You don't need oil to put on the salad, to say the least. Third S is steamed veggies. You need something green and yellow every day, so learn how to use a vegetable steamer and steam up something green and yellow every day, and steam up a lot of it so you can coast on it for a few days. This is where cows get their calcium. Cows don't drink milk. Where do they get all the calcium? From the greens they eat. The calcium's in the soil. The green plants pick it up, and that's where the calcium really comes from. It doesn't come from milk. Okay. It's bright green, buy it, and it's organic, buy it, bring it home, rinse it, steam it, and eat it. And squeeze some lemon juice or some balsamic vinegar over it, or some of your healthy salad dressing. Okay, and the final S is starches. We are starch-burning organisms. Starches will not make you fat. There's all this now, don't eat carbs, they make you fat, don't eat carbs. Nonsense. We are carbohydrate-burning organisms. Our mitochondria burn glucose, not fats. And these will not turn into fat. They cannot turn into fat. The body is not going to blow apart a glucose ring, grab those carbon fragments, and string them out as long-chain fatty acids. It doesn't work like that. You eat a bunch of starch, you have a couple of baked potatoes for dinner, without a bunch of fat, you will replete the sugar stored in your muscles, and once your glycogen stores are all filled up, you'll burn that excess calories off as heat. You'll stick your foot out from the covers at night, you'll throw the covers off, and your body temperature go up 1/4 degree, and you burn it off to heat. Carbohydrates will not turn into fats, so have some, especially lunches and dinners, and this is how you get healthy weight, healthy nutrients without putting on weight. It's clean burning. It turns into carbon dioxide that you breathe off and water that you pee out. Starches are a clean burning fuel. No, they won't make you fat. 1 billion Chinese used to know that. Here's Jeff's burgers and fries, and he'll show you on a Saturday morning, whip up 30 really tasty lentil, quinoa, veggie spice burgers or whatever, put them in the freezer. Now you got a freezer full of veggie burgers. You don't feel like cooking? Bring a couple out, heat them up, boom, lunch. Got a salad in the fridge, you're set. This should be easy. The more you do this, the easier and more convenient it gets. Minimize flour products, baked goods, etc., breads, etc., especially if you're trying to lose weight. If you're trying to lose weight and you're frustrated, I've been vegan for 5 years and I'm still carrying on this weight. What's the problem, Doc? This food makes me fat. What's happening, this is your doctor doesn't know this, but now you will, and people at home will. This is a phenomenon called oxidative priority. In other words, it's easier for your body to burn sugar than burn fat. Okay? It's easier to burn glucose than metabolize these long-chain fats. So what? Well, if you eat sugar and fat at the same time, you'll burn the sugar and store the fat for later. Okay? It's a primitive survival mechanism to get you through famines. You will burn sugar and store the fat for later. So what does that mean? You want to be a fat vegan? Pour oil on your pasta. You will burn the sugar in the pasta, you'll store the fat in the oil. Almond butter and jelly sandwich, you'll burn the sugar in the bread and the jelly, you will store the fat in the nut butter. Put earth balanced margarine on your baked potato. You will burn the sugar in the starchy potato, you will store the fat in the margarine. It's that sugar-fat combo that's sticking to you. And if I have an obese vegan in front of me, they're eating oil and flour products without question. And they're eating them together. So what do? I mean, I can't eat potatoes? No, you can eat potatoes, but don't put oil on it, put salsa on it. Put something non-oily on your starches and you'll burn the starches cleanly. They won't turn into fat. When the paleo folks say carbs make you fat, no they don't. The potato you're eating with the steak makes you store the fat in the steak. It's the fat that's in the meat that you're storing, not the carbohydrates that have turned into fat. That's why they don't want to eat carbs, because it makes them store the fat in the meat. Again, now this is just for the weight loss. So if you're already a lean vegan, none of this matters. You put a little whatever you want on whatever you want, it doesn't matter. But if you're trying to lose weight, avoid this fat-sugar combo. That's what's sticking to you. Well, how about walnuts and avocados? I mean, you can have those, but put them on your salad. Put it on your broccoli, okay? You'll burn it cleanly and it won't stick to you. So pour your tahini dressing over your greens and you won't have a weight problem. One last thing on this, timing in life is everything. When you eat starches, it takes about 4 hours for the insulin thing to go up and down for the body to clear the starch out. So if you have your baked potato at lunch, let 4 hours go by before you eat the fats at dinner. Have your baked potato or rice at lunch and have the tahini and the fatty avocados at dinner there, and there the twain shall meet. But again, this is just for the weight loss, folks, but this explains the frustrated, overweight vegan who can't lose weight. It's because she's eating fat and sugar. Okay, we've already been through this. Legumes are important. They're a great source of energy. Anything in a pod is a legume: beans, peas, chickpeas, lentils. So find a way to get them in. We'll try for once a day. Lentil stews, bean burritos, and zucchini boats there, or lettuce boats there. But legumes are your friend. All long life folks on this planet eat legumes. Find a way to get them into your diet. Nuts as well. Hold nuts to a handful a day. But they belong to your diet, but you just might need a couple to start with till your body gets used to them. Again, people eat too many legumes too fast. And fruits for desserts. My wife and I, for desserts, we used to eat fatty, even the coconut ice cream. Now we have blueberries with rice milk over them, and we'll have 1 tablespoon of coconut bliss on top of it. I mean, we'll go through the whole carton. A quart of coconut bliss lasts us about 5 months in the freezer. We just have a tablespoon at a time, once a week, twice a week. And same thing with chocolate bars. We snap off 2 squares, put it back in the fridge, and chocolate bars last 2 months in our freezer. Okay, juices, it's turning out, they're not bad, but most of the goodies are attached to the fiber that winds up in the compost. You're better off eating the veggies. Everybody's got to find their own preferences, and they're going to change over time. They'll change during the year. It's fine. Worst happens, you get a little gas. It goes away. Don't worry about it. Don't let it throw you off this very healthy way to eat. If you think you may have a gluten intolerance, don't eat it for a couple of months, and then have 3 slices of whole wheat bread and see how you feel. Your body will tell you. But folks who they're always gassy or whatever, make sure that you don't have an unrecognized gluten intolerance. Make sure there's no hidden dairy in your diet, and read the labels. It's in the bread, it's in the sauces, it's in the gravies, it's certainly in the restaurant food. And liquid fats, oils or liquid fat in the bottle. And finally, the gas issue. Turns out they've analyzed the gas in the colon. Must have been a wonderful experiment to do. A lot of tubes went up a lot of rectums. They put the gas into a chromatograph and found out that 80% of the gas in the colon is, drumroll, swallowed air. What? Yeah, it turns out only about 20% is made from the fermentation of sugars on the beans. Why does this happen? Well, just the way your throat's engineered, every time you swallow, 2 tablespoons of air go down your stomach. If you swallow 20 times in a meal, you're going to have a good half pint of air in your stomach. Once it's in your stomach, it's going to go 1 of 2 places. It's going to go up, going to go down. You either release it discreetly from above, or it's going to go down and gurgle and burgle, and you'll finally pass it as flatus. But know that there's air that you're swallowing every time you eat. Some folks swallow a lot. The gum chewers, the smokers, the people who are uptight, going to swallow a lot, and they pump a lot of air down their stomach. But there's air in the food. What do you mean? Well, on a fork full of rice, there's air between the grains of rice. In a spoonful of corn, there's air between the kernels of corn. A forkful of salad, there's air between the leaves of lettuce. Floret of broccoli, there's air down the floret. There's air in the food. And people are eating and talking and shoveling the food in, 2 chews, boom, down it goes. And they blow their stomach up with air, and they belch and they fart and they blame the beans. But the truth is, they're just eating too darn fast. And they're swallowing all this air, especially if they're drinking through straws. And they wind up like this guy. So to reduce intestinal gas, I started this talk from saying chew your food to a cream because you can absorb more nutrients. Well, guess what else chewing your food to a cream does? Forces the air out of the food. You'll swallow a lot less air if you put that forkful of salad in your mouth, put the fork down, and make salad puree for 5 seconds. You'll force most of the air out, and you'll stay a lot more socially acceptable to your friends. Again, don't drink carbonated drinks with dinner, and soak and rinse your legumes if you're going to be making soup, and you get rid of most of the hemicellulose. Okay, so here you are, decide to do a vegan diet. There's nobody who can't do a vegan diet, though some people may take a longer time to adapt, which I'll get to in a second. I got 9 minutes to go. People around you may not be supportive. Doesn't matter. God forbid you get a heart attack or a stroke or a breast cancer. It's only you in that hospital bed. It's not your spouse, it's not your daughter-in-law, it's not the people at work, it's you. We're talking about your life, your existence on this planet. Once you have a stroke, life is never the same. So it's not about the other folks at home, it's about you. You go home, you want to adopt a vegan diet, you know what you say to people? Don't say anything, just start doing it yourself, make those soups, make those salads. Hi, hon, chili on the counter, help yourself, and just start doing it yourself. Don't set yourself out, I'm going to eat a vegan diet now and I'm going to get healthy, watch me. That's painting a big bullseye on your head. You know what people are going to do. Well, how about this? Oh, can you eat that? Oh, here's a steak, that looks good. Don't open yourself up for that. It's nobody's damn business what you order for lunch. Just get on with eating this healthy food. And in the restaurant, I let everybody else order. I call the wait person over, whisper in her ear, ooh, this looks good. Can your chef make that, but hold the chicken? Yeah, we can do that. Great. Can you make this, but hold the cheese? Oh yeah, we can do this. Thank you. Nobody heard a thing. My food just comes, and everybody else on the table looks at my lovely vegetables and says, ooh, I wish I ordered that. So don't make this a big project, and don't put yourself on center stage. Just quietly get on with it. Your body is never not looking. You can't tell your body, look over here and have a cheeseburger there. What was that? Your arteries know. Your liver knows, your whole body, who are you kidding? Okay, Shakespeare said thy own self be true. Dr. Klaper said thy own health be true, thy own arteries be true, thy own colon wall be true, thy own breast tissue be true, thy own prostate be true. That's the only thing that matters. Your body just wants to know what's in the food coming down and be true to it. It's not about them, it's about you and the example you set. People will notice as you get healthier. Taste change takes 6 to 12 weeks, and you really start jonesing for the lentil stew instead of the beef chili. And what we see when people adopt a plant-based diet is the most spectacular changes in medicine. The obesity starts to melt away, the arteries open up, the high blood pressure comes down, the joints stop hurting, the psoriatic skin clears up, the asthmatic lungs stop wheezing, the migraine headaches go away, the irritable bowel settles down, and they turn into normal, healthy people. It's the most exciting transformation in medicine, and it's available to all of us by eating the diet we're really meant to run on. We are not carnivorous apes. As I mentioned yesterday, the paleo folks, I think, are setting themselves up for an epidemic of colon cancer, heart attacks, strokes, autoimmune diseases, diabetes, inflammatory bowel disease, and dementia. Wait 5 years, watch what this diet does. It's out of truth. It's not what we are supposed to be eating. And the folks who think we should be everybody should be eating paleo, are they really advocating a flesh-based diet for 9 billion people 3 times a day? It's going to destroy this planet. Large-scale animal agriculture is the driving force of every single environmental devastation we faced. It's why they're cutting down the forest. The soils of the Midwest are running into the Mississippi River and going out into the ocean at the rate of a dump truck load a second off corn and soybean fields destined for the gullets of animals. Most of the water in this country irrigates alfalfa, corn, and soybeans. Most of the water is polluted by the pesticides and herbicides on the corn and soybean fields and the manure from the feedlots. Most species are being driven to extinction because we're taking their land to grow feed corn. And most of the carbon dioxide, methane, and nitrous oxide are coming from animal agriculture that's making this planet warmer. Burgers for 8 billion is a recipe for earthicide. And I urge you to educate yourself. Go to the website of Dr. Richard Oppenlander called Comfortably Unaware, which is right where the meat and dairy industry wants you. And read his book, watch his videos called Comfortably Unaware, you'll understand. And he says very clearly that you can put solar panels on everybody's house, you can give electric cars to everybody in the world. And unless we change from an animal-based diet to a plant-based diet, nothing is going to make any difference. We are being asked as individuals, if you want to live a long, healthy life, evolve your diet to a plant-based one. And as a species, we want to stay living on this planet, we must, as a species, adopt a plant-based diet. And don't think it doesn't matter. You got kids, you got little kids, you got nieces and nephews like I do. Every time you're in the restaurant and you turn to the waiter and say, I'll have the beef, I'll have the veal, I'll have the chicken, I'll have the turkey. Every time you say that animal's name, your children's world gets a little hotter, a little drier, a little deader, and those seas rise a little bit more. Now, stop kidding ourselves that these animals come from the farm. They come from your future, from your kids' futures, from your grandchildren's futures. It matters. We have screwed up their world. It's their world, and we owe them finally getting our own trip together so we stop injuring the planet that they need to live on. But they say, Doc, I got this meat craving. Man, I really want this stuff. Where does it come from? And after I do vegan for a few days, I want that piece of meat. It's a real thing, and I'm not denying that. What do I think is happening? What I think is happening is this. Where does this meat craving come from? At age 6 months of age, the baby is still nursing at the breast. And with all the love in the parents' hearts, nobody, your mother didn't know, my mother didn't know, but with all the love in their heart at age 6 months of age, that jar of baby chicken is open, that jar of baby lamb, baby veal is open. And from that time on, 3 times a day, animal flesh is slathered on that infant's intestinal tract. All through infancy. By early childhood, they're eating their Happy Meals. They're off to a flesh-based diet. Through childhood, puberty, adolescence, their teens, their 20s, their 30s. You eat animal flesh 3 times a day for 30 years. You're going to grow dependent upon it. There are animal-based nutrients, muscle-based nutrients, carnitine, creatine, that your body makes, but if it's coming in 3 times a day pre-formed since infancy, what do you think your genes are going to do? They're going to downregulate. They don't want too much carnitine in your bloodstream. You'll create TMAO. And so you've got a dependency on this preformed nutrients coming in, and then you go to a meeting like this, you see forks over knives, you see cowspiracy, the plant-based light goes on, and suddenly you stop it, and all that preformed carnitine, creatine, gone. Got to make your own right now. Most people can gear their enzymes up and do this, but some folks may take 3 months, 6 months, a year to get those genes and enzymes going. And during that time, they draw down on their own carnitine, creatine, so they don't feel so good. And then they eat some meat, and all those preformed muscle nutrients flow through their tissues. Whoa, I feel great. Vegan, schmegan, man, I'm a carnivore. I need that meat. And they do. But this is not normal human physiology. This is an acquired dependency created by feeding a human infant animal flesh 3 times a day since infancy. No other primate does that. No gorilla does that. No bonobo does that. But we do now. Didn't used to. All through the 1600s, 1700s, 1900s, we lived on farms, and you ate from your garden. You may have pot roast on Sunday and fish on Friday, and that was it, man. You ate potato soups and cabbage stews. You didn't go killing your chickens every night for buffalo wings. That's for darn sure. You run out of chickens pretty quick. It was mostly a plant-based diet. But since World War II, we've gotten so rich, and we're subsidizing the corn and soybean, and we get these cheap cheeseburgers. But this is not normal human diet. It's not normal human physiology. And this meat craving is induced. And you can break through it by having a little bit of meat and coast on it for as long as you can. I tell my folks, if you feel my body needs animal protein, and it might, because of this acquired dependency, that fair enough. I tell folks, then consider it medicinal, animal flesh. Consider meat like a very expensive vitamin tablet that's toxic in large amounts. You wouldn't be eating handfuls of multivitamins. Don't be eating big slabs of flesh. Find the smallest amount of animal flesh you think your body requires from the least injurious source. It's always injurious to the animal. And then have a little bit on Monday, coast on that 3, 4, 5, 6 days until Friday, Saturday, Sunday, until you think you need a little more, and have another size of deck of playing cards. Coast on that 4, 5, 6 days as long as you can. Have it twice a week, not 3 times a day like we are doing now, and space out the time in between the animal flesh, and after a while, it drops out of your diet. That's what I recommend people do. So, this is hard acquired knowledge that I'm sharing with you. Medical students, doctors are not taught about nutrition. They are practicing medicine like what their patients are eating has no effect on these diseases that these people are bringing in front of them. And I've been going to the medical school saying, listen, to the young students, first, second, third year students, you're not going to be seeing leprosy and smallpox. It's what your patients are eating. And that's why they're sitting in front of you, obese, clogged up, hypertensive, diabetic, and inflamed. It's from the meat and the cheese and the oils and the sugar and the flour. It's the food. It's the food. And before you order another $1,000 scan, another $500 lab test, ask the patient, what did you eat yesterday? Take me through a typical eating day. And it's full of burgers and buffalo wings and pizzas. That's all you need to know, man. Start there. Send them to the plant-based dietitian. Let her do some counseling. See them back in a couple of weeks and get that patient healthy at the base level. And the students are open to this message. And so I've teamed up with Plant Pure Nation. Nelson Campbell's organization, who are helping me going around to the medical schools. If you would like to help me, because it takes money for these plane tickets, etc., go to my website and go to drklaper.com and click on Moving Medicine Forward. And you can not only learn how you can support us, but I've got a little square on the bottom saying if you know a medical student at a medical school, or you're somebody who's on the staff who think they might be interested in having Dr. Klaper come and talk to them, click here, tell us their name, and we will contact them. So I want to get to as many medical schools as possible. Here I am up at McGill in Montreal. Here at the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor, the students are sparkly-eyed there. They come up to me afterwards, thank you, somebody, because in every med school class there's 20 students who've seen forks over knives. They've seen what the hell, the light is on, but nobody's talking to them about it, this powerful tool. Well, I'm there to legitimize, you're not crazy, it's the food, and that's where the focus should be. I was in Honolulu, spoke at Tripler Hospital, the surgeons were very open to the message. Everybody's really open to this message. So feel free to learn more about this at movingmedicineforward.com. Okay, so a little bit over. I don't have a whole lot of time for questions, but yes, ma'am.
So my son's in medical school at St. George's in Grenada. I know he would be really interested in this.
Great.
Is there any way?
Absolutely, I'd love to go to Grenada. Absolutely.
Talk to you about.
Right. Yes.
He actually got his master's in environmental science.
Yes, they're making that
so
connection between the environment, etc. I don't want to overstay my welcome. Steve, let me know when you have the hook and when I need to get off here. 3 more questions. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Number one, I'm just going to throw out the movie Cowspiracy when it comes to eating, food, and the environment. Cowspiracy on Netflix or your library. My real question is, I really appreciated the Furman discussion on vitamins because that's been a problem I've had with the excessive amounts of certain fat-soluble, blah, blah, blah. But I do want to ask, for those over a certain age, say 65, would you recommend bigger, more supplementing or not?
Right. The question, do older folks need more protein? Do they need more vitamins? It's showed that you could use an extra dollop of protein if you're over 60. But again, these are folks who've been eating meat and dairy all their lives. Lean, healthy vegans probably don't need much protein. But we're talking about an extra scoop of lentil stew or an extra hummus sandwich. Other vitamins. No, if your gut is healthy, your absorption should be fine. I wouldn't think it's a problem. Way in the back, sir. Yes. Yes. Yes.
What would you modify for cancer?
Oh my, that's a major issue. But the main thing I would modify for cancer, people and the paleo folks, I want to shake them. When you eat a big piece of meat and all the amino acids from the meat flood your liver's got all these building blocks. Well, it's like giving an 8-year-old boy a box of Tinker Toys. You're going to build something with it. And your liver responds by putting out a gush of this hormone, IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1. It's the most powerful growth-promoting hormone in the body. And it promotes, it's like pouring gasoline on a fire. So if you got a cancer growth going, the last thing you want to be eating is chunks of animal flesh. So get on a whole food, plant-based diet and consider intermittent fasting if you've got chemotherapy coming up. But eat plants and get on with it. Absolutely, stop the meat. Yes, sir. Last one.
I have osteoporosis. My doctor has told me that I need to go on. I need to start on I have osteoporosis, and my doctor has told me that I need to start on Prolia, and I'm concerned about doing that. If there could be problems for me down the road.
Okay, the issue about osteoporosis, important issue. It is not a calcium deficiency. Taking calcium pills will not make your bones stronger. It will calcify your arteries, won't make your bones stronger. And Prolia does not make your bones stronger either. Make a long story short, go to my website, drklaper.com. I did a video called Healthy Bones, and I go into the whole osteoporosis issue. Watch my Healthy Bones webinar, it'll explain it. But basically, osteoporosis, not a calcium deficiency. It's disuse atrophy of the bones. When you stop using your muscles, they turn into guacamole. They atrophy. Well, so do your bones. We used to spend all day working in the garden, lifting heavy tools, carrying firewood, putting shingles on the roof. We used to be physical creatures, and every time you carry a load on your shoulder, a little wow of weight goes down your spine, down your hips, and the bones cells that spin out new bone wake up. And just like, when you use your muscles, they get bigger. You use your bones, you carry weight, and your bones get stronger. The osteoblasts are still there. That's how you make your bones stronger, is you get yourself a little 8-pound weighted vest, grab a couple of 3-pound hand weights, go for a 30-minute walk every day. Just wear the vest, go to the post office. Every step you take with the weighted vest, a couple of hand weights, stresses your bones, wakes up the osteoblasts, they start building new bone. Yeah, you need some K2, you need a little calcium, et cetera, but it's mostly disuse atrophy of the bones because we're so sedentary. We sit when we walk, when we eat, when we move. We're sitting all day. Not when we walk, I guess, but when we work. So see my Healthy Bones webinar. I go into the whole detail of it, but use your bones and they'll get stronger. Well, good. A lot of stuff. Thank you very much, everyone. Eat plants. Eat plants. Eat plants. Thank you.